Shoulder pads. Since the earliest days of Warhammer, they have been a key part of the iconic look and feel of the Imperial Space Marines. Every Marine has them, and every chapter uses their own distinct color scheme and iconography. In this video, I'm going to paint shoulder pads for 10 different Space Marine chapters. I will be using them to equip 2 of my Deathwatch kill teams, but you can of course apply these techniques for any given chapter. My name is Kai, you're watching Brush and Axe, and thank you for joining me as we explore ways to paint Space Marine shoulder pads. I assume some of you will already know what Space Marine chapter you are planning to paint. So if you do, please feel free to use the chapter marks to jump to the right places. And for everyone else, let's start from the beginning. When I built my models, I first took some notes on what chapter each of my Deathwatch Marines should originate from, as I wanted the weapon loadout and head choices to be somewhat matching with the lore of a given chapter. Of course, I have a few thoughts on things that I could have further improved in hindsight, but perfection is the enemy of done, so it is what it is. Using my notes as a starting point, I went to warhammer.com and grabbed some example images for the chapters I needed. The upgrade kits are a great source for painting examples, but you'll find resources everywhere on the web with a simple search. I had to grab some from other places too. Next, I created a template file in Photoshop to use as a painting reference. This type of preparation will make things easier down the line, at least for me, because I want to make sure to hit the right color scheme, and many of these chapters I never painted before. I start with all of my shoulder pads primed in black. As you can see, I've left them unassembled for now. I find it easier this way than having to navigate the brush around the power pack or other tight areas on the models. I pick out the ones that I felt would be easier to paint from a lighter base color and use white ink from Liquitex of the opaque variety to start brightening up the selected chapters. I do this for all shoulder pads that are not going to be mostly black in the end. So Black Templars, Ultramarines, Imperial Fists, Space Wolves, Howling Griffons, Blood Angels and White Scars first get a white undercoat. The pauldrons for Black Shields, Salamanders and Iron Hands I leave black for now. Once done, we should have prepared each shoulder pad in a color that gets us closest to the optimal starting point. Maybe worth mentioning, many of these chapters I'm painting for the first time, so please don't see this as the end-all be-all tutorial. I'm showing you what I do and what I learn, and I want to be clear that I'm not saying that this is the best, right, or the only way of doing it. It's just what I do, and I'm happy to learn, so please feel free to share what you would have done differently in the comments. Starting with the Sons of Dorn, the Imperial Fists, I'm using Iyanden Yellow contrast paint to give the main body of the shoulder pad a quick but controlled base coat. And while I have the yellow to hand, I also do the same for the Howling Griffons, Space Wolves and the center of the White Scars pauldron. This will come in handy at a later stage when we continue painting those chapters, as the contrast paint can leave a splotchy or stainy finish on even surfaces. I'm using Imperial Yellow to brighten and clean up the yellow parts. Using Scale 75 black thinned down with a bit of water, I carefully start painting the fist, trying to not hit the white circle in the center. And then I move on to painting the circle outlining the chapter symbol in black as well. I'm using and checking my reference image to make sure I use the right colors, and I finish up the black by carefully painting the trim. Yellow mostly doesn't have a great coverage, and I don't want to have to fix a black spot on the yellow, so again I move slowly and carefully. I apply a few more corrections here and there, where I felt the first pass wasn't good enough yet. And next I use Dawnstone to edge highlight the black. I try to apply a thin outline to all areas I painted black before. This process takes a while, but I try to hit all corners of the fist, the outer ring, and also the pad trim. Once all that is dry, I use Seraphim Sepia as a shade to add some definition to the outer area of the yellow towards the trim. It will add some visual interest and help separating the yellow and the black even further. Now let's take a second to appreciate how small these things are. And when you're happy with how it looks, we can move on to attaching the shoulder pad to our model. That is 1 done and 9 more to go, so let's move on to the white scars. For white scars, I'm starting off from a white base coat as well. Starting with thinned down Mephiston red, I first paint the lightning and surrounding trim in red. And I had already blocked in the center of the chapter symbol with Iyanden yellow contrast paint for a quick yellow base. Again, I take my time, trying not to stain the white areas. Then I use a small drop of Imperial yellow to brighten up the center area. And using Apothecary white contrast paint, I carefully panel line the inside of the trim. Then I use Evil Sun's Scarlet to highlight the upward-facing areas of the Scar's chapter icon in the center. And for a last bit of pop, I use White Scar, fittingly, to apply some final highlights on the trim and body of the shoulder pad that I want to shine the brightest. Once I'm happy with the result, I'm using Tamiya extra thin plastic cement to attach the shoulder pad to our Marine. That is number 2 done, and time to move on to the next chapter. Just as with the Imperial Fists, I started from a white base, adding Iyanden yellow contrast paint for the initial yellow base. I'm using Imperial yellow to brighten up the areas facing upwards to the light and to even the coverage, where the contrast paint had left some staining. Once the yellow is dry, I apply a thin coat of Thunderhawk blue just on the trim, and then repeat the same with Fenrisian grey. Using scale 75, I carefully block in the wolf symbol in the center, again moving carefully and slowly so I don't have to fix yellow over black afterwards. As with all of the yellows, I'm using Seraphim Sepia to shade the inside of the trim. And then use Dawnstone to edge highlight the wolf symbol in the center. For the final edge highlight, I'm using Fenrisian grey with a bit of white to push the outer corners of the shoulder pads, and then we are done. The Howling Griffons are a successor chapter to the Ultramarines and come with a rather intricate red and yellow color scheme. So again, I started from a white base with Iyanden yellow contrast paint for a yellow base, and then started brightening up the yellow using Imperial yellow. Moving on to scale 75 black, I carefully paint the griffin symbol in the center. And to establish the red areas, I start with Mephiston red and try to paint a straight guiding line to establish the red areas. And then carefully blocking in. You can see that again I'm moving very slowly and carefully here. And I go back to check the overall look, symmetry, and make small corrections and adjustments as I go. Once I have the first quarter established, move on to the other side and continue the visual lines. Again, carefully blocking in and making corrections as I go. Lexicanum indicates the chapter symbol with this pattern of red and yellow. I found different references before, so if you're a Howling Griffons expert, please let me know in the comments if this is the correct pattern or if I mixed up the order of yellow and red. With the red and yellow base established, I'm going back to scale 75 and paint the trim of the shoulder pad. And while I have the black to hand, I also apply some tweaks and correction on the Griffon icon in the center. For some more refinements, I'm taking Avalanche Sunset to fix up the yellow areas again. And then I use Dawnstone to highlight the black trim and the Griffon itself. As a last step, I apply some Evil Sun Scarlet to highlight the upward-facing areas of the red. And using plastic glue, apply the shoulder pad to the model. This is 4 done, 6 more to go, so let's move on to Black Templars. For Black Templars, I'm starting from a white base. Using Scale 75 Black, I first block in the Maltese Cross or Templar Cross in the center and also paint the trim in black. Just as with yellow, I'm using Seraphim Sepia to apply shade on the inside of the trim and around the Templar symbol, to give the white a little tint. Using Dawnstone as my highlight color, I apply edge highlights to the cross and the trim, again moving slowly and carefully. To add some more volume, I use White Scar to clean up and brighten the white on the upward-facing areas. And this time using Abaddon Black for some cleanup and corrections. With the shoulder pad painted, we can glue it to our squad leader using Tamiya Extra Thin Cement. Nice. So we're halfway there now, 5 more chapters to go. Let's have a look at Ultramarines. I'm starting with Frostheart contrast for a quick blue base over a white undercoat. And then I clean up with Macragge Blue. I make sure to not hit the chapter symbol and leave it fully white. And to prepare the trim for metallic paints, I'm using Abaddon Black to base coat the trim. And while I do, I managed to put a black whoopsie on my blue base, so I go back to Macragge Blue and fix my mistake before moving on. For the trim, I start from Balthasar Gold as a darker bronze foundation, then moving up to Retributor Armor to add a shine on the top, center, the left, and right side of the pad, as well as a first edge highlight. For an additional layer of pop, I move on to Skullcrusher Brass for a second highlight. After the trim has been painted, I'm using Drakenhof Nightshade to apply controlled recess wash on the inner side of the trim and around the chapter marking. Again, cleaning up and making some refinements, and attaching the shoulder pad to the model with plastic glue. Next we are on to Blood Angels. I'm starting with Blood Angels Red contrast paint over a white base coat. Then I use Mephiston Red for cleanup and starting to establish a brighter and more even red in the center, on the trim and the upward facing areas where the light would hit. Using Abaddon Black, I carefully paint the wings around the blood drop. Then I use Evil Sun Scarlet to push the red of the gem and upward facing pad areas even higher. I also use Evil Suns to edge highlight the trim that we painted in Mephiston Red before. The wings get a quick edge highlight with Ashen Grey, and lastly I dot some white ink on the blood drop to give it a bit more shine. With these steps, we are calling it done and applying the shoulder pad to the model. This is the only model in my Deathwatch squad that also carries a chainsword. I felt for a Blood Angel that is probably something that would make sense. So we got 7 painted now, all of the ones that started from a white base coat. So it's time for the final 3 and the ones where we are starting from a black base. For the Iron Hands, I keep it rather simple. We have a black primed shoulder pad, and starting with Iron Hand Steel, I'm blocking in the hand and then also take care of the trim. You could apply some highlights with Stormhost Silver here, or use Nuln Oil for an additional shade. The main reason I didn't is because I put in quite some work on my Deathwatch to make the silver arms and weapons stick out and have different tones of metal. So I wanted the chapter symbol of this Iron Hand to come across a bit more simple and not overwhelm the rest. It's time for a black shield now. Starting from a black prime, I used Ushabti Bone to base coat the purity seals. I will be doing multiple thin coats, but while the first one dries, I'm using Mephiston Red to establish the base of the wax seals. While this is drying too, I clean up some of the black areas. And then move on to the second coat of Ushabti Bone on the parchment of the purity seals. For the second coat on the wax, I'm switching to Evil Sun Scarlet and apply a small highlight on the raised areas. And then, using Iron Hand Steel, I paint the chains on the shoulder pad. For some finishing touches, I apply Edge Highlight of Dawnstone on the pad trim and some of the scratches. And lastly, using black ink, I try to carefully apply some script and writing on the purity seals. Then I glue the pad to our Marine, and we have a Deathwatch black shield ready for battle. The last chapter missing for my squad are the Salamanders. Starting from a black base, I first use white ink to slowly start brightening up the chapter icon in white. And while the white is drying, I'm taking Caliban Green to give the trim an even base of dark green. Then I take Elysian Green for a quick but careful edge highlight on the green trim. I use Apothecary White contrast paint to recess shade the chapter symbol, and then move on to White Scar for a more solid and bright white. Once I'm happy with the overall result, our Salamander can take his pauldron and join the ranks of the others. That is 10 shoulder pads done, so let's get to the glamour shots and take a look